Welcome back to VADA Live. I'm your host, Dan Carrigan. For this segment, we're stepping back and looking at the bigger picture around Virginia's General Assembly session. Really what it is, why it matters, and what the overall business climate feels like as we're entering 2026. We have a panel together of experts today. Joining me, I have Mimi Perka, Director of Legal and Legislative Affairs at VADA, and Ralston King, President of RivCo. Quick note, Ralston serves on VADA's lobbying team. Mimi and Ralston, Happy New Year to you both, and welcome to VADA Live.
Thanks, Dan. We're looking forward to being here.
Thanks, Dan. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And it's session time, maybe everybody's favorite time of the year. I wanted to start with a personal question for you both. Where are your minds going into the General Assembly session? How do you prep? From my end, I always think I'm going to wear some comfortable shoes when I'm walking around the General Assembly. Maybe I'm skipping leg day, a few days before. How do you get ready for the General Assembly session?
So I'll start. I think session is always what I would consider organized chaos, right? It's long mornings and days and nights, but I also feel like it's like taking a test or getting ready for the big championship game. All your studying and practice starts as soon as the 25 session ends, and then now is the time to take the test or play in the championship. So I feel like it's a sense of excitement, and I'm ready to go. I think we've obviously got a lot of new people down here, but I think that's the thrilling part about the General Assembly session.
Yeah, I'd say for me personally, it's just a lot about getting your affairs in order because the next 60 days are going to be a little bit unpredictable. So you need to, have your dry cleaning done, have your outfits picked out, have all your contacts in your phone, have everything ready to go so that you're ready to go when things go wrong, because they're obviously going to go wrong at some point during the process. So you need to prepare as much as you can to get ahead of all that.
It's amazing you mentioned that this is almost the playoffs. It feels like the election happened yesterday, really. Yeah. And just level setting for a moment with you both. And it's for viewers who don't live and breathe Virginia politics. This General Assembly session, what does it mean and why does it matter for businesses across the state? And Ralston, can start with you.
Sure. Yeah. The General Assembly session, it's the oldest continuous lawmaking body in the Western Hemisphere. It started in 1619 in Jamestown. It was just one chamber, and now it's the House and Senate. Those lawmakers create new and update and change laws in the Commonwealth. I always tell people the General Assembly affects your day-to-day lives, from taxes and fees and, how entities in any industry you're in are regulated. There's more of a direct impact on your business through zoning and permits and employment law here in the Commonwealth. The federal government certainly has an impact, but it's, more environmental and interstate commerce standpoint, whether it's tariffs or interest rates. So certainly that does affect your industry in some capacity, but things move a little slower up in DC. So Virginia, you've really got to be plugged in so how this really can affect what you do in your business.
Yeah, echoing that, I'd say Virginia's a rocket docket of a legislative session. And it really is amazing that these 60 days or 45 days, all these decisions being made are going to have a lasting impact on businesses and the business community for the foreseeable.
So the tone, the vibes for this session, where are they? Ralston, can you share any insights? Where does this compare from last year? For businesses across the state, what are you hearing?
Yeah, I think the vibe is generally positive. We go through this every 4 years where we have a new governor, a new lieutenant governor, attorney general, usually. And, the lieutenant governor served in the Senate, Attorney General-elect Jay Jones, he's been in the House before, and everyone knows Governor-elect Spanberger's been in Congress. So, the unfamiliarity is not as much as you might have sensed 4 years ago. But generally, I think there's an excitement. And, the speaker has mentioned at a press conference about a month ago, talking to his caucus about restraint. That was his key word that he mentioned in the press conference, and making sure we don't overstep and continuing the good things that the General Assembly is doing. So I think everybody's excited about making some changes, but I do feel like there's a sense of caution. And I think that's good. Being very moderate in the approach is always positive for, I think, really anybody, regardless of what business industry you're in.
Yeah, there's definitely a buzz in the air from what I can hear. I mean, we have now 18 and counting new House members, one new Senate member already, and the elections are continuing to happen as people keep getting pulled into the administration. So there's definitely a buzz with all these new folks in the legislature. I think they're really excited to get moving, to get going, and we're excited to see what happens.
With a lot of new, and you mentioned that, Mimi, members, and that was certainly a headline within the election last year. How does that change things from the General Assembly session? How does that really affect approach? What does that kind of mean when there are perhaps lawmakers that are jumping in and learning things as well?
I'd say the biggest thing for us and the biggest challenge with so much new is probably the committee assignments. I think a lot of people probably don't know that when we have new legislators, their committee assignments they're not announced until session is actually in session. So it makes it tricky from our point of view to know who we need to be talking to, who we need to be educating about our industry, what messaging we need to be getting out there, and how to really stay focused on these new people. But it's fun. We're excited.
What's it like to be able to forge new relationships? I know Don Hall mentions that often within just VADA, General Assembly, and really the greater automotive community. What's it like for both of you to have this opportunity to think, okay, there may be new relationships building on old? How does that play out? What's that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, a lot of these folks, I tend to always think and remind people, whatever client it is or whoever it might be, is that these people are usually doctors, lawyers, teachers, business owners. They don't understand whatever industry you're representing. And so that's always something to keep in mind and make sure that, yes, they've been elected, but they are not knowledgeable about all. They're always interested in understanding from the government affairs professionals, okay, why do you represent VADA and what is the franchise system? What are all these things I've heard about in terms of warranty and recall? And so they just don't know that. And I think it's really key to kind of build on that and develop those relationships as being the educational individual. People sometimes coin lobbyists as maybe a negative connotation. I always see like we're the conduit. We're there to educate them and make sure they understand on the things that they got to vote on. And so building those relationships and having a sense of trust is really, really important. So they always feel like they can go to Mimi and say, hey, I need the answer to this. And if Mimi doesn't know, she's like, I'll get the answer. Those are really critical pieces as you develop the new relationships, and then you have long-lasting trust, because a lot of these people hang around the General Assembly, whether they're in the House for years or they move to the Senate or they run for governor. So you see these people for the rest of your professional career.
Amazing.
I'm extra excited about this new class of legislators because I'm not the new one in town anymore.
Always small. We're celebrating just about anything, Mimi. The small wins happen, and it's amazing working with you as part of the VADA team as well. It's hard to believe it has been a year already. So this 60-day session, from your perspective, what makes the pace and structure different? Ralston, you reminded me as we were prepping for this that, well, one is 2026, and two, that's an even-numbered year, which means budget time. What can we expect with this session in particular? What's it mean having this one on the calendar?
I think biennial budget, so it's in even years, 26 to 28. We've got to look at a variety of different things. There's a significant Medicaid shortfall that could be totaling $2 to $3 billion. There's possibility of shortfall in K through 12 education, and then the HR one that passed at the federal level has implications on tax revenue based on no taxes on tips and Social Security. So they got to determine whether they're going to support those measures from the federal level. So that's kind of on the back of everyone's mind. The pace moves. It will move rapidly, but I would say that we've got kind of this inauguration period next week, and so giving us that extra 15 days in a 60-day session, and then having the inauguration stuff. I think everybody's kind of prepping for that, and you kind of have to take your time and really lay out strategy-wise, knowing that things will rush quickly and then they'll slow down and then rush quickly. And so those are things that we kind of pay attention to in a year like 2026.
Seems like the rush quickly. That resonates, Mimi. I think that with your experience as well.
Last year felt like a whirlwind. I'm looking forward to the 60-day session. Hopefully I can get my rhythm, my pace down a little bit more.
And when we do think about this session getting underway, I know a theme throughout this discussion here is really the business side for owners, kind of channeling and homing in on that. So what should this, or in your eyes, really should people's focus be on from a business perspective in the Commonwealth? What's your headline for business owners to perhaps keep a top of mind or stay on top of?
Mimi, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I'd say with any session, when the legislative session comes around, I'd say that generally it's a great time for businesses to audit their priorities, their issues, see what policy changes might be the most impactful to their businesses. It's a good reminder that policy changes are an inevitable part of doing business in the Commonwealth, and the legislative session is really a great opportunity for businesses to come to Richmond, meet with lawmakers, discuss what real-world impacts they're seeing, what the economy looks like, what their workforce looks like, where they could use some additional help. I think it's a great opportunity for businesses to really take hold of what matters to them most.
And Mimi, while we're chatting, so the Association of VADA prepping, of course, is a huge part of the year. What does that look like behind the scenes, including the much anticipated Dealer Day on the Hill that's coming up?
Well, I'd say that we're always preparing for the next session, honestly, policy-wise. Part of my job, I'm constantly tracking what's going on in other states. I'm reading studies. I'm researching the economic landscape. I'm talking with members about issues all year long. So we're really constantly thinking about what our next legislative priority is going to be and what we need to do to achieve it, what boots on the ground we need to have, and how we might be able to reach these goals. More narrowly, we're working right now on getting to know our new legislative body, and we're trying to anticipate a little bit of what's likely to come down the pipeline. We're in meetings with legislators, other stakeholders, and then as bills are filed, along with our team, we read every single bill, and we track every single bill that's going to be filed. And we need to know if there's something in there that might be something that we need to talk to the legislator about, if there might need to be an exception that might need to be made. There might be an impact that was unintended that we need to really parse out. And I think people would be surprised at how many bills we end up tracking, because facially, a lot of these bills don't appear to directly impact auto dealers, for example, but there are impacts down the pipeline and really waves that could be created by some of these bills that are being introduced. So there's a lot of preparation. And Dealer Day on the Hill is really one of my favorite days because it gives us an opportunity to introduce legislators to our members, the people who matter the most to us, our dealer community. It's such a great opportunity for dealers to get a glimpse of the process, to tell their stories to legislators, to put a face to the issues that we're constantly talking to legislators about. And to tell their stories. Actually, Ralston and I were with a senator yesterday, and he asked us explicitly when our dealer day was, because he is also excited about our dealers coming to town and getting to hear directly from the people that his decisions are directly impacting.
Prediction time, team, which I know is always a fun exercise through and through. So if you don't mind entertaining me for a minute, and let's just say weeks ahead, we're looking at the end of session, what we know now, predictions, your industry insights, well, what do you think that headline's going to be? What do you think that defining part, topic, top line's going to be of this session? Well, what's your gut telling you at this point?
Yeah, my gut still hones in on the budget. I think they're going to really focus in on that. Governor-elect Spanberger ran on affordability. And I think the speaker's talked about that, given all of his newly elected House Democratic Caucus members. So I think you're going to see a lot of bills focused on affordability, whether it's housing, talking about balancing the energy supply and demand that also needs to meet renewable energy goals, but also maintain grid reliability. There's bills on minimum wage, family and medical leave, paid sick leave. And I think by and large, a lot of the issues have been proposed, and some of the bills that have been dropped are relatively reasonable. It's nothing that has been too extreme. And again, as I mentioned, the speaker talked about restraint, right? And so while there are things that the General Assembly will do that will affect your business, I think he's thinking more of incremental changes and not some catastrophic, change that can upend a business by any means. That's not his intention or goal, or anybody really in the General Assembly. Now, certainly, you've got business owners who are going to be concerned about some of the bills that drop, whether it's, repeal right to work. And, there is a senator who's dropped that bill to repeal that statute. There's not a House member. And I think just because one member puts something out there and it's a headline in the RTD or what have you, that doesn't mean it's actually going to go anywhere. I think, Governor-elect Spanberger has been very open and honest to the public that she is not interested in repealing right to work. And so there are things like that I think legislators maybe put in, what we call red meat issues that are thrown out there to kind of, adhere to their base constituency. But that doesn't always reflect the rest of the members. And as one legislator supporting one issue or 5, that's not enough. You've got to get 140 people on board and really drive the train, especially with, a trifecta. You've really got to make sure everybody's in lockstep. More so than I think even before, because I think it's easy for people to step out of line a little bit on a caucus initiative, knowing that there's a little bit of a change in the House there, and you've got a Senate that's really close, 21-19. So everybody always thinks, hey, there's an issue out there that Democrats support or 10 Democrats support, so that's going to fly right through. That's not necessarily the case, right? And we've seen that in the past, whether it's Republicans fully in charge trifecta or Democrats. We always presume from the public sphere that they're going to jam whatever they want down, but that's just never the case, actually. It actually takes a lot more strategic moves. So I think we'll see a lot of different issues, but I still think the budget is going to be the main key component to something they've got to tackle, because that's a large shortfall.
And then for business owners, auto dealers, running daily operations, what do you think their mindset or takeaway would be, or how would you encourage them to really keep track of the General Assembly session? Ralston, you brought up a great point where you may read a headline of something that's really grabbing, engaging, and it could be a core issue, but then you do some research and it's just the practicality of what may or may not happen. Is there a recommendation for folks just being those really smart, we'll call them General Assembly consumers, even though they're not tracking every single development? What's your takeaway? What would you encourage them to do, and how in touch would you like them to be with what's going on to General Assembly this year?
Yeah, I mean, to Mimi's point, Dealer Day is so vital, not only from a relationship standpoint, but also coming up here, we can talk to them till we're blue in the face, but they want to hear directly from their constituents, right? They want to hear from their car dealer on why this bill positively or negatively affects them. So that's one, but I also... it's one thing to go on social media and read the newspapers. It's another thing. Every legislator does a town hall that I know of every week. They get on and do a virtual town hall with their constituents, and they talk about the issues that they're focused on. And so, subscribing to those and engaging and hearing what your legislator has to say directly, I think is really important. So you're not just reading the headlines of the newspapers and starting to panic about something that may or may not happen, right? And so if you're engaged on the town hall, I was on the Henrico County where I live town hall the other day, and each legislator went through kind of their main issues, right? And so you kind of have a good sense of, okay, they're talking about housing, they're talking about energy, and that gives me an understanding of maybe some of the things that I've read about, and I need to follow up and check in with them. And oftentimes those legislators have a link and a connection and communication point to contact them and say, hey, tell me more about some of these housing bills that I'm interested in, right? So I think that's really vital, and I think it does take 30 minutes of your time, but they usually do those on Friday in the afternoon where you can get on for 30 minutes and pay attention, and these are busy business owners, but I think those kind of connection points through town hall are really vital just to make sure that you're engaged directly with your legislator.
Yeah, I'd echo that and just tell business owners to stay engaged, but also to trust the process and to trust your team. We have a great team at VADA of lobbyists. The General Assembly moves really fast. we are here to put your interests first when it comes to a lot of this nitty-gritty stuff in the bills, but even small engagements from you all, reading updates, listening to podcasts, attending Dealer Day on the Hill, meeting your local legislator, as Ralston said, going to your local town hall, and also filling us in on issues that are impacting you the most in your day-to-day business ensures that your perspective is part of the process, that your issues are visible, and that you're going to be heard when it comes to decision-making time.
Don reiterates constantly to us, if you are not at the table, then you're on the menu, right? Like, so if you truly think that, well, that doesn't affect me, General Assembly members don't set laws typically up for one specific industry. If they're addressing minimum wage, they're not going, we're only going to address minimum wage for those in the fast food industry. I mean, they set laws that are across the board. So when you read or hear about something, like reach out to VADA and Mimi and the team, connect with them and just get clarification so you're aware that, hey, this is what's going to change, or this is the direction they're headed. Tell us where you are, right? And so I think that's really important, that sometimes people just misconstrue and think, well, that doesn't matter to me. And I think that's disingenuous and kind of a myopic view of the way the world works. So pay attention and engage, and maybe it won't, but I think you'd rather know than always be sitting there wondering if this will or will not affect you.
Speaking of Dealer Day on the Hill, let's share the date, January 28th this year. As you both mentioned, it's vital, important for those across the dealership to attend. There is additional information on VADA's website, and I'd like to thank both of my guests for their insight and perspective. You've been hearing from Mimi Perka, Director of Legal and Legislative Affairs at VADA, and Ralston King, President of RivCo. Excuse me, Ralston, I was going to say, I wanted to get that right every single time, but if feeling's going to mess it up, it would be RivCo, and Ralston is part of the VADA lobbying team. And I thank you for watching VADA Live. My name's Dan Carrigan, and we hope to see you next time.